I stood outside that reception hall with a glass of sweet tea in my hand, listening to my son-in-law laugh, and I knew right then that my daughter's life was about to fall apart. She just didn't know it yet. Only I did. And I had exactly 45 minutes to decide what to do about it. Let me back up. My daughter Vivienne turned 31 last spring, and she had spent the better part of 3 years building something real with a man named Garrett. He was 35, worked in commercial real estate, drove a clean truck, shook your hand firm, looks you in the eye, the kind of man who, on the surface, checked every box a father could ask for. He remembered my birthday. He held doors open. He called me sir the first 6 months, then switched to calling me by my name when I told him sir made me feel like I was being audited. I liked him. That's the hardest part of this whole story to admit. I genuinely liked the man. My wife passed 8 years ago. Ovarian cancer, 14 months from diagnosis to the end. It was the kind of loss that rearranges everything inside you, shifts the furniture around so nothing sits where it used to. Vivienne was 23 when we lost her mother, and she carried that grief like a stone she refused to put down. She threw herself into her work. She's a nurse practitioner, works a pediatric clinic in Savannah, and she didn't date seriously for almost 5 years after. So when she came to me on a Sunday afternoon, sitting at my kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee, and told me she thought Garrett might be the one, I listened. I listened hard. And I believed her. I had one concern. Small thing, I told myself. Maybe nothing. About a year into their relationship, Vivienne mentioned that Garrett had borrowed money from her. Not a little money. $12,000. He'd had a deal fall through, he said, and needed to cover a gap before his commission came in. She gave it to him without blinking. When I asked her if he'd paid it back, she paused just a half-second too long before she said yes. I didn't push it. I told myself I was being a suspicious old man. Vivienne is a grown woman. She has good sense. Her mother gave her that. Garrett proposed at Christmas. We were all at my house. Vivienne, her older brother Wendell. No, wait, that name's taken. Her brother, whose name I'll give you in a moment, and a few cousins. Garrett got down on one knee in my living room under the ceiling fan her mother picked out in 2003. Vivienne covered her mouse with both hands. I watched her eyes go bright with something I hadn't seen in years, and I thought, whatever I was worried about, let it go. Let this girl be happy. Her brother is Isaac, 28, works for the city, good kid. Isaac shook Garrett's hand and pulled him into a hug. I shook his hand too. We drank bourbon. It was a good night. The wedding was set for the second Saturday in October. Savannah in October is something else. The heat breaks, the Spanish moss catches the light. Different in the afternoon, the whole city softens around the edges. Vivienne wanted the ceremony at a venue outside of town, an old plantation house converted into an event space, with white columns and live oaks draped in moss and a garden ceremony under the open sky. She'd been planning it for months. Every detail was hers. The morning of the wedding, I got to the venue at 10. Ceremony wasn't until 3. I'm old and I don't sleep well, and I wanted to see the place set up, walk the grounds, have a quiet moment with my daughter before everything started moving fast. I'd written something to say, a short thing. Something her mother would have said better, but I was going to try. I was walking the side path around the back of the main house, the one that runs between the garden and the carriage house they used as a groom's suite. Stone path, old magnolias on both sides, thick shade. My shoes didn't make much noise on the stones. I wasn't trying to overhear anything. I want to be clear about that. I was just walking. The window on the side of the carriage house was propped open. October in Savannah is warm enough in the morning that you still want the air. And I heard Garrett's voice before I saw anything. He was talking to someone, laughing, relaxed in the way men get when they think no one important is listening. I stopped. Not because I decided to. My feet just stopped. "Man, I'm telling you," Garrett said, "this is the easiest thing I've ever done. She has no idea." I moved closer to the wall, out of the line of sight from the window. Another voice, younger, someone I didn't recognize. "You really gonna go through with this?" "Of course I'm going through with it." Garrett laughed again, easy and low. "You know what her old man is worth. The house alone in that neighborhood goes for $450, $470. He's got a pension, Social Security, probably investments. Old nurses' husbands always got something put away. And she's an NP. She's not hurting either. I marry her today. I'm in position. 2 years, maybe 3, I file for irreconcilable differences. Take what I can in the settlement." The other man said something I couldn't quite catch. Garrett said the $12K was an investment. Had to make it feel real early. She paid it, didn't she? Shows you what kind of woman she is. Generous. Trusting. The worst kind to be in a negotiation. He said it like it was a compliment to himself. I stood with my back against that warm stone wall, and I did not move for a long time. I am 63 years old. I spent 30 years as a high school history teacher and department chair. I have coached JV basketball, chaperoned more field trips than I can count, sat with students in crisis at 2 in the morning. I have buried my wife. I have learned to hold still when everything in me wants to move. I held still. My first instinct was to walk through that door and end it right there. And I mean end it. Not the conversation, the whole day. Pull Garrett out by his collar in front of his groomsmen and let the whole venue hear what I'd just heard. For about 40 seconds I wanted that more than I've wanted almost anything. But then I thought about Vivian. Vivian in her dress, which I haven't seen yet, but which her Aunt Lorraine, no, her aunt whose name I'll use, her Aunt Beverly. Wait, that name's taken too. Her Aunt Constance, her mother's sister, who drove up from Jacksonville for this. Vivian had been getting ready since 7 that morning. Her cousin was doing her hair. She had her mother's pearl earrings in, the ones I'd saved since 2016, when I finally could bear to go through the jewelry box. If I walked in there right now and blew this up, what happened next? Garrett denies everything. His groomsmen back him up. Vivian is standing in her dress with 200 guests arriving in 4 hours, and her father is out here claiming he heard something through a window. He'll say I never liked him. He'll say I'm overprotective, controlling, a grief-stuck old man who can't let his daughter move on. And Vivian, who has wanted this, who has been planning this for a year, who has her mother's earrings in. What does she do? She loves him. She believes in him. She will not believe me on the word of a cracked open window. I needed more than my word. I walked back to the main house very slowly, like a man with nowhere to be. I found a bench in the garden, and I sat down, and I made a decision. I was going to let this wedding happen, but I was going to build the case first. I called Isaac. He answered on the second ring. He was in the parking lot helping shuttle elderly relatives. I need you to come to the back garden, I said. Don't tell anyone. Don't bring your phone out when you walk. Just hold it at your side. Dad, what's wrong? Come to the back garden. He came. I told him everything I'd heard, word for word, the way I'd trained myself to listen and retain information after 30 years of faculty meetings. Isaac's jaw went tight. He started to say something, and I put my hand on his arm. Not yet, I said. I need you to do something for me right now. I need you to go back to that carriage house, find a reason to be near Garrett, and get him talking. Ask him about the honeymoon. Ask him about the new condo. Just get him comfortable. And? I held up my phone. I'm going to be close enough to record. Isaac looked at me for a long moment. You sure about this? I am not sure about anything today, I said. But I know your sister deserves the truth on her terms, not ours. He nodded once and went. What happened next took about 25 minutes. Isaac walked into the carriage house through the front door, loud and cheerful, congratulating Garrett, asking about the hotel in Charleston where they were honeymooning. Garrett was relaxed in his element, enjoying the attention. I came around to the side of the building, stood under the magnolia, and held my phone up to the gap in the window with the voice memo running. I didn't get everything. Some of it was muffled, some was other voices talking over. But I got enough. I got Garrett telling Isaac, laughing, that he and Vivian had a good arrangement and that he'd never been much for long-term commitments, but this one made financial sense. I got him saying, when Isaac asked about kids, "Oh, we'll cross that bridge. I'm not thinking about kids. I'm thinking about getting settled first. Get the house, get comfortable, see how things develop." Not damning on its own. But combined with what I'd heard before, with the $12,000, with the patterns I'd been half ignoring for a year, it built a picture. I also got one more thing. Near the end, when another groomsman had stepped out and it was just Garrett and Isaac, Isaac asked him, carefully, naturally God. I was proud of my son in that moment. "You love her though, right? Like genuinely?" There was a pause. Garrett said, "Isaac, your sister is a great woman. She's going to be a great wife. I think this is going to work out very well for both of us." That pause, that careful, calculated non-answer. I had what I needed. Now I had a choice to make about timing, and this is the part of the story where I made a decision that some people, maybe a lot of people, would have made differently. I want to be honest about that. I have thought about it every day since. I did not stop the ceremony. Here is why. If I walked into that ceremony with a recording on my phone and accused Garrett in front of 200 people, one of two things happened. Either Vivian believed me in that moment, in front of everyone, and her wedding day became the worst day of her life, public, humiliating. Her private grief turned into a spectacle, or she didn't believe me in that moment, and she married him anyway out of stubbornness and embarrassment and the feeling that her own father had tried to steal something from her. Either way, I was making the choice for her. Either way, I was my voice, my decision, my moment, not hers. Vivienne is her mother's daughter. Her mother did not want to be rescued. Her mother wanted to be informed, trusted, and then left to make her own choice. So I made a different plan. I put on my suit. I walked my daughter down the aisle. She was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen, and I am including every sunrise over the Georgia coast since 1987. She had her mother's earrings and her own smile, and she was so happy it was physical. You could feel it standing next to her. When the minister asked, "Who gives this woman?" I said I did. I said it clear. I gave her away on the outside. On the inside, I was holding her closer than I ever had. The reception was at the same venue, in the great room and out onto the terrace. String lights, a band that played soul, and a little country. Good food, people dancing. I danced with Vivian to the song she'd chosen for the father-daughter dance, a Stevie Wonder song her mother used to hum in the kitchen. I held it together. I am not going to tell you it was easy. It was the hardest performance of my life, and I've had some hard ones. At the reception, I found a moment with Vivian alone, near the end of the night when the crowd had thinned and she was sitting at the edge of the terrace with her shoes off, watching people dance through the glass doors. I sat down next to her. She leaned her head on my shoulder the way she used to when she was small. "You did good today, Daddy," she said. "So did you, baby," I said. I put my arm around her. I held my phone where she could see the screen and I pressed play. I let her hear it. Both recordings, all of it. I did not say a word. I let the voice do the talking. I watched my daughter's face change. I have seen Vivian angry, devastated, disappointed. I have seen her at her mother's bedside. But I have never seen what I saw in those 3 minutes. It was the look of a woman rereading every chapter at once and finding the wrong words in all of them. It was not dramatic. It was quiet. That's what real grief looks like. It's quiet. When the recordings ended, she sat still for a moment. Then she said, "The $12,000. Not a question, a realization. "Yes," I said. She said, "He never paid it back. I lied to you because I was embarrassed." "I know." She sat up and straightened her dress and looked out at the dance floor where Garrett was laughing with someone's uncle, completely at ease, a man who believed he had just successfully completed the most important transaction of his life. "What do I do now?" she said. "That's up to you," I said. "I just needed you to know, tonight, before anything else." What Vivienne did next is the part I'm most proud of her for. And it is also the part that answers, I think, what most people would wonder about. She did not make a scene. She did not confront Garrett on the dance floor. She excused herself quietly to the bridal suite, changed out of her dress, and called her friend Tamara, a family law attorney in Atlanta who had been sitting 2 tables away all evening. By midnight, Tamara had taken a full statement, heard the recordings, and told Vivian she had enough to begin an annulment process before the marriage was even 24 hours old. I handled Garrett. The next morning, Sunday, while Vivian was on a call with Tamara going over paperwork, I knocked on the door of the hotel suite they'd been given for the night. Garrett opened it in a t-shirt, coffee in hand, looking like a man who had no idea his world was about to change. I said, "We need to talk." I did not raise my voice. I did not touch him. I sat down across from him in that suite and I told him very calmly what I knew and what Vivian knew and what Tamara was already setting in motion. I told him about both recordings. I told him that if he contested the annulment or tried to claim any marital assets, the ring, the gifts, anything, I would make sure that every person in his professional network heard exactly what I had recorded in that carriage house, including the managing broker at his real estate firm. I also told him something else. I told him, "I want you to understand something. My daughter is not a transaction. She is not a position or an arrangement or an investment. She is a woman who loved you genuinely and trusted you completely. And that is not a weakness in her. That is a failure in you, and I need you to sit with that." He sat with it. The annulment was finalized in December. Garrett did not contest it. He resigned from his firm quietly about 6 weeks later. I don't know the details of that, and I didn't ask. The $12,000 was addressed in the annulment agreement. Vivienne got every cent back, plus the cost of her legal fees. She moved back to her house in Savannah's Victorian district, the one she'd bought herself 5 years ago on her own credit and her own income. She painted the front door red. She adopted a dog named Biscuit, who weighs 11 pounds and acts like he weighs 200. She called me last Thursday to tell me she'd signed up for a pottery class at the rec center near her clinic and made a bowl that looked, she said, like a very optimistic ashtray. I laughed until my chest hurt. People ask me sometimes, mostly my brother, who has strong opinions about everything, whether I should have stopped it at the altar, played the recording in front of everyone, let the whole room hear it, given people the show they didn't know they were there for. And I'll tell you what I tell him. My job that day was not to protect my own satisfaction. My job was to protect my daughter's dignity, which is a different thing. A public confrontation at the altar gives the story to everyone in that room. It gives it to the relatives she barely knows, the co-workers of Garrett's who don't know her, the photographer, the caterers, the band. It takes the worst moment of her life and turns it into entertainment for 200 strangers, and it takes the choice away from her. The moment I make that decision for her, I stop being her father and start being her manager. Her mother taught me the difference. I have one regret, and it is this. I should have looked harder at the $12,000. I should have asked the question I didn't want to ask because I wanted to believe the man was good. I wanted Vivienne to have what she wanted. I wanted to stop being the sad widower whose grief was making him see danger where there wasn't any. That wanting cost my daughter a year of her life and a lot of heartbreak. So I will say it plainly. For anyone listening who might be where I was, when something sits wrong with you and you cannot explain exactly why, and you find yourself inventing reasons to dismiss it, that feeling is information. It is not paranoia. It is not grief playing tricks. It is your experience talking, and it has earned the right to speak. Your children will not always thank you for listening, but they will not be able to say you didn't. Vivienne called me Father's Day morning this June. She said, "I know last October wasn't the day either of us wanted, but I want you to know, I'm okay. I'm actually good, and that's because of you." I didn't say anything for a second. Then I said, "Your mother would have figured it out faster." She laughed. "Probably, but you did good, Daddy." I held the phone and looked out my kitchen window at the backyard, at the garden her mother planted in 2009 that I have been stubbornly keeping alive ever since. "So did you, baby," I said. "So did you." I've been turning this whole thing over in my mind for months now, the way you turn a stone in your hand without really meaning to. Not because I regret what I did. I don't. But because I keep thinking about cause and effect, about the invisible thread that connects a person's choices to their consequences, even when they can't see it coming. Garrett made choices. He made them carefully, deliberately, over a long period of time. He chose to see Vivienne not as a person, but as a position. He chose to use her generosity, the $12,000, the trust, the love she gave openly and without conditions, as leverage. And he did it with confidence, the way people do when they've gotten away with things before and started to believe they always will. That confidence is always the thing that undoes them. Not some outside force, not luck running out, just the natural weight of their own decisions catching up. What I've learned, being 63 years old and having watched a lot of people move through this world, is that character is not what you perform when people are watching. It is what you say when you think you're alone. Garrett stood in that carriage house and told his friend exactly who he was. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't conflicted. He was relaxed and pleased with himself. That's not a man having a bad moment. That is a man revealing his architecture. And no amount of firm handshakes or yes sirs changes what the foundation is made of. My daughter is one of the most intelligent people I know, and she didn't see it. I need to say that clearly, without any blame attached to it. Because that is the other thing I have learned. Intelligence is not the same as wisdom, and wisdom is not the same as experience. Vivienne had intelligence in abundance. What she didn't have yet was the specific experience of being deceived by someone she'd chosen to trust. That is a lesson no one can teach you from the outside. It has to be lived. The most I could do was make sure she came out of it intact, with the truth in her hands and the choice in hers. The hardest thing I did that day was not walking into that carriage house. The hardest thing was walking down that aisle with her, smiling, holding her arm, knowing what I knew, letting her have that moment before I took it apart. People might say that was wrong with me. Maybe it was. But I have held enough grief in my life to know the difference between protecting someone and simply delaying the pain to give them a fighting chance. What I gave Vivienne that afternoon was not a lie. It was time for the paperwork to get moving, time for her attorney friend to be in the room, time for Vivienne herself to be somewhere private and safe when the truth hit her. Instead of standing at an altar in front of 200 people with nowhere to go, Resilience is not the absence of being hurt. Resilience is what you discover you're made of after the hurt lands. Vivian painted her front door red. She got a dog. She signed up for a pottery class. That is not a small thing. That is a woman deciding that her story does not end in someone else's betrayal. That takes a kind of quiet courage that nobody gives out awards for, but that matters more than almost anything. I think about what I would tell a younger version of myself, the man who wanted so badly for everything to be fine that he talked himself out of asking hard questions. I would tell him this: your discomfort is data. The thing that doesn't sit right, that you keep explaining away, that you mention once and then bury that thing, is trying to tell you something. Listen to it, not out of fear, not out of suspicion, but out of respect for your own judgment, which was built by everything you've already survived. The people who love you are counting on you to pay attention.